กับพระพร้อมๆกันขอโทษครับผมไม่เปิดไม่เปิดอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังภะคะวันตังอะภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมมัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนะมามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะมะยังพันเตติสรณเนนะสหปัญจศีลานิยาจามะทุติยัมปิมะยังพันเตติสรณเนนะสหปัญจศีลานิยาจามะตติยัมปิมะยังพันเตติสรณเนนะสหปัญจศีลานิยาจามะ
พุทธัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ
นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ
พุทธังสรณังคัจฉามิ
พุทธังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ธัมมังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ธัมมังสรณังคัจฉามิ
สังฆังสรณังคัจฉามิ
สังฆังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังคัจฉามิ
อิสรณกัมมังนิจิตังปานาติปาตาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
กาเมสุมิจฉาจาราเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
อาเดนาดานาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
อิมินาทานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
กาเมสุมิจฉาราเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
กาเมสุมิจฉาจาราเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
มุสาวาดาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
มุสาวาทาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
สุราเมรยมัจจปมัตตานาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
สุราเมรยมัชฌัปมาทฐานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
ยามานิปัญจสิกขาปดานิสีเลนะสุขติญญาติสีเลนะโภคสัมปทาสีเลนะนิพพิญญาติสมาสีลังวิโสดาย old faces, some new ones. Always good to be here. And always good to meet together to talk about and practice the Dhamma. This is also a very good thing to be doing. People meet together for all sorts of reasons, sometimes not very skillful or very good reasons. But it's very, very good to meet together for Dharma reasons. So I'm pleased to see you. I'm pleased that you've been able to take the time to come here today. And so today I've got to talk about Asara Puja and Kalpansa, because those are the big events of the last few days. There was another big event a couple of weeks ago, but I don't like to talk too much about that because I was a year older. My birthday. They come round awfully quickly lately. Anyway. So those are the things that have been going on, and I've been talking a lot over the last, actually 2 weeks about Asara Puja, because, you know, I go into the prisons and I counted up, I've been into 12 prisons in the last 2 weeks. And everywhere I go, I talk about the Buddha's first sermon. So I've been telling all these people I've been seeing about the Buddha's first sermon. And then again at the Forest Hermitage, on Mondays and Fridays and last Sunday. So but now we've progressed, of course, we've moved on, because now that Asara Puja is over, I can start talking about the next of the Buddha's great sermons, which was the Anattalatana Sutta. So it's a bit of a change. Anyway, let me just say something about Asara Puja and Kalpansa, because I expect some people here are not very clear what these two occasions mean, and it's always good to be reminded if you do know. So first of all, Asara Puja. Well, each of the major events, major festivals in Theravada Buddhism is named after the month in which they occur, because they always occur on a full moon. So we have these ancient lunar months, and there's one called Asara. And unlike the Thai lunar calendar, the full moon ends the month. So the month of Asara comes to a conclusion with the full moon. So on the full moon of Asara, 2,600 years ago, the Buddha met with the Panchaviki, that means the 5 ascetics, and he gave them his very first teaching. A couple of months ago, you will remember, we celebrated Visakha Puja. And this year there was a big fuss made of it, because, particularly in Thailand, because it was the 2,600th anniversary of the Buddha's enlightenment. Which means that the first sermon, this Asara Puja, was the 2,600th anniversary of the first time that the Buddha taught. And what happened after Visakha Puja was that the Buddha remained very close to the Bodhi tree where he attained his enlightenment, and he had no wish, no desire whatsoever to do anything or to teach. He didn't want to talk to anyone. He just stayed close to the Bodhi tree every week, moving to a new seat, but all the time keeping the Bodhi tree in view. He had such enormous gratitude for that tree for sheltering him during the night of his enlightenment. And this went on for nearly 7 weeks. And watching this was Brahma Sahampati. And Brahma Sahampati was watching and worrying. He was worried because it looked like the Buddha was going to remain silent. And had the Buddha remained silent, then many people, many beings, clearly, Brahma Sahampati could see this, would miss out. They would lose the opportunity of coming out of their suffering. So Brahma Sahampati was very concerned about this. And eventually he managed to push it into the Buddha's mind that there would be some with but little dust on their eyes who would understand. And that caused the Buddha to reflect on the lotus pond and to compare human beings to lotuses in a lotus pond. Now, most of you are familiar with lotus ponds, and lotus ponds, like all ponds, have mud and dirt in the darkness at the very bottom of the pond. And that's where this beautiful plant, the lotus, begins its life, in the mud and the darkness. And it seeks the light. In order to blossom, it seeks the light. And it pushes up through the water until eventually it comes to the surface. And if you look into a lotus pond, you will find some lotuses just appearing out of the mud, and others about halfway up, and some others just about to break through the surface, and some already through the surface and in mud, and about to blossom. And the Buddha reflected that we, human beings, are like these lotuses. Some are just still playing at night. They're down in the mud and darkness of ignorance. But others have begun to wake up, and some are already beginning to push up and seek the light. And some are very close to breaking through and attaining liberation. So reflecting on that, the Buddha decided that yes, he could teach, he would teach, but then of course the question came into his mind, who should he teach first? I mentioned his gratitude to the Bodhi tree, but he also had enormous gratitude for those who helped him during his 6-year-long quest. And he thought of the great teachers he went to in the beginning. He'd been to Alara and he'd been to Uddaka. And he will remember that what they taught him wasn't enough. But he was still very grateful to them, and he thought of going to them. But then he realized they'd already passed away. So then who else? Well, there were these 5 ascetics, the Panchavali. They'd been very good to him when he'd been practicing extreme asceticism, breath control and fasting. They thought that he would break through very soon, he would become enlightened, and then they, as his attendants, would definitely benefit. And so they stayed with him, and they watched and they waited, and all that happened was that the Buddha nearly died. So he gave up that practice, and when he gave it up, they were so hurt and upset. They invested so much emotion in him that when he gave up that practice, they were deeply hurt and they left. And they wanted no more to do with him. But they'd been very helpful to him. So he decided that he would seek them out and he would give them the first fruits of his enlightenment. Now by this time, they were staying in a deer park not very far from Benares. I calculated it once, I measured it. As the crow flies about 120 miles. And so in the 8th week after the enlightenment, the Buddha walked by stages all that way from Bodh Gaya to Savana. And eventually he arrived. He arrived in the deer park, and these 5 saw him coming in the distance. And they weren't at all pleased to see him. They were so upset with him. And they talked amongst themselves. And they said, well, we'd better be polite. But we don't need to do anything else. We'll just be polite. Don't be enough. But then, as he came closer, clearly something very profound had happened. And they couldn't help themselves. One went and received his outer robe. Another went and received his bowl. Another made a seat for him. Another brought water to wash his feet. And they did all the duties of pupil to teacher. sat and they listened to what he had to tell them. Now this was a very remarkable occurrence, but it took place in utter simplicity. Think about it now. When we call to mind things to do with Buddhism, we think of wonderful temples, we think of majestic Buddha images, but there was none of that. It was just 6 weather-beaten, middle-aged men sitting up there in the open. 5 of them listening and 1 talking. And what he told them, what he had to tell them, was this. We call it now the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. That means, Dhammacakka means the wheel of Dhamma, Dhammacakkappavattana, the setting rolling, the wheel of Dhamma. In that setting rolling of the wheel of Dhamma, the Buddha reminded those 5 that he'd known the extremes. He'd been a prince, he had all the sensual pleasures. He'd been an ascetic. He practiced self-mortification to an extreme. Neither of these had brought him peace and happiness. It was the middle way that did it. And this is a very important principle. And if any of you are practicing meditation, remember it, because the middle way is actually very difficult to tread. It's like walking a tightrope. And I well remember Luang Por Chah talking like this, and saying that sometimes he had to tell one of his disciples to go right a bit, sometimes to go left a bit. And we have to do it for ourselves. We have to be continually balancing our practice. So then the Buddha went on to tell them that he had seen and fully realized 4 noble truths. And the first of these is dukkha, from truth. And this, of course, is, as we know, a difficult word to render satisfactorily in human life. But the experience is simply suffering. We often translate dukkha as unsatisfactoriness, it can mean incompleteness, imperfection, all of that. But how do we experience it? Suffering. No bones about it. That's what it is. Our life is tied up with suffering. And that is so whether you're rich or poor, famous or not, male or female, young or old, we're all in that same suffering boat, I'm afraid. So then the Buddha went on to explain why. There is a reason for everything. So what's the reason? What's the cause of this suffering? And here the Buddha pointed back into our minds. It's here. It's not with the government, it's not with your boss, it's not with your husband or wife, it's here. And what do we find here? We find kilek tanha, craving, desire, wanting. Never content. That's our lot. A few weeks ago, I had some students come to me, and they said to me, what do you say to people who say that Buddhism is a bit pessimistic? I said, they haven't read the whole book. The first 2 truths, suffering, the cause of suffering, not too bright. But then, the third of the 4 noble truths, the end of suffering, the stopping of suffering. It can be stopped. The 4th noble truth, the way to do it. Marvelous. I've said it here before. I was so impressed when I first came to Buddhism. People weren't just saying, do this, do that, be good, and all the rest of it. They were actually giving a means, a practical means of achieving it. And that is remarkable. So there we have it. The 4th of these 4 noble truths, the Noble Eightfold Path. And very simple it is too. It's not that complicated. Scholars always want to complicate everything, but believe you me, this path is a very simple and direct one. The difficulty is doing it, but that's what you have to do. And you always have to remember that Buddhas can only point the way. And you must not be looking at the finger pointing, but looking at where it points and going there. I was taught years ago, and I've told you this too before, by an old man who used to tell us, don't call yourselves Buddhists. Call yourselves, if you want to call yourself anything, followers of Gautama. And it's a very important point. You know, we can always put the Buddha badge on, and off we go, I'm a Buddhist. And lots of people do it these days. Be a follower of Gautama, follower of Gautama the Buddha. When you follow anyone, it means you follow them. You actually go where they went. That's it. And that's what you must try to do. That's what gives Buddhism meaning. Following where the Buddha went. And it's a path which he made available to us, he opened it to us. There it is, it's available. We have enormous good fortune in having encountered this path and having the opportunity to walk it. So please, don't waste it, don't trivialize it. This is really good Dhamma. Good Dhamma Vipaka. So please, use it, don't squander it. We have many opportunities in life